Good morning, friends. You're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
And today, I think Irene's going to plant some potato slips.
Yep, I've got sweet potato slips that have been taking over my kitchen for months. And I've got a bunch of them that I've already hauled out to the greenhouse. As you can see, I still have plenty here. And it's actually been kind of fun because I used to always have houseplants. But in the last few years, I haven't because I was always afraid the cats would get into them. And of course, a lot of houseplants are toxic to cats. But she doesn't seem to care about this one. And even if she does, they're not toxic. So we actually had to unravel this. It had decided to wrap around this chair during the night. So we had to pry it off the chair. But she doesn't seem to care, so I'm happy with that. It's kind of cool having a very green plant on my countertop here. And I have a lifetime supply of sweet potato slips, so yeah.
But before Irene gets to work out in the greenhouse planting the potato slips, the sweet potato slips, not just potato slips,
Right.
we want to shout out to Simple Living with Karen. She's a friend on YouTube, and she likes to drink, which kind of tea, Irene?
Orange Pico, decaf. Now, I have to admit, we had to scrounge around a little bit to find some decaf, but I do have one container that has decaf. So we have some Constant Comet orange flavor decaf, and should that not be sufficient, we have a few other varieties.
And we have a few dozen other types of tea.
Well, we have dozens and dozens of types of tea, but most of them are not decaf.
So, I'll leave a link at the end of this video to Karen's channel. You should stop by and take a peek. It's really interesting. She lives up in Canada, so she has a different growing climate than what we have. She said she's going to be having a polar vortex maybe coming up, which is really, really cold, and that's kind of too bad for planting.
Yeah, actually we've got friends on the East Coast that are concerned about the same thing, that all of a sudden this hot weather has gone crazy. And I tell you, I keep looking at my advanced weather forecast too, because we have seen heavy frost at this time of year before. And I'm like, please.
and give some thoughts for our good friend CB, because he's having to move his peppers someplace else out of his greenhouse because they're going to get an honest to gosh freeze scheduled this weekend, I think is what he said.
Right. I knew that the East Coast was going to get whacked, New England was going to get whacked, but I didn't see how far south it was going to go. So
looks like it's not going to be a good day for tender plants.
Yeah, so we're crossing our fingers for all our friends on the East Coast, no matter how far south, who have planted out their tender plants this spring.
Well, I hope you have a good day. Irene's going to go out and sweat in the greenhouse. I've got some other things to do.
Well, you saw me make these, and it's time to see me plant one of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another bag of compost. And I'm going to use half of it in the top of this bucket. Okay. And what I have here with me is something that I just brought from the kitchen. It's stuff that's been growing on my counter all winter. Last year, we decided for the first time that we were going to try and plant sweet potatoes. So we managed to grow some slips, and we got some pots, and we planted some sweet potatoes. Now, it was not the biggest harvest on the planet, and I'll be the first one to admit that, but we did learn a lot about growing sweet potatoes from last year's experience. One of the things we learned was we had problems with grubs. Now, it wasn't just the sweet potatoes that had grub problems, it was pretty much the whole garden. This area had a total plague of June bugs last year, and they really did take over everything and make one heck of a mess. That was one thing we learned. Another thing we learned is that if you feed sweet potatoes heavily, what you will get is a lot of skinny, sort of funky sweet potatoes, and not a lot of good ones that you'd actually want to eat. Now, what I'm going to do here is I have a whole stack of sprouts here, and I'm going to actually choose kind of the way this goes. And this is another experiment, and we're hoping to plant some more later. I just have a limited quantity of soil right this second, so I'm kind of squished. But we're hoping to be able to get some more this month so that we can start more. Because what we want to do is we tried them last year. We were talking with Rob from SAN Garden, and he said that they eat the leaves. And we're like, whoa, that's cool. We're always up for a plant that you can eat more than one part of. That's neat. No waste there. So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to have some of these plants for sweet potatoes and others for sweet potato leaves. And what we'll do is we'll decide some plan to keep them separate. And I'm planting a ton of these in here because I have a ton of them. In fact, I still have a monster sweet potato in the kitchen that is producing huge quantities of shoots as we speak. And I'm actually thinking we might start eating the leaves on that one. I really want these things kind of out of my kitchen. They've taken over the world. It's gotten to the annoying phase, as they say. So a lot of these don't look great, but I suspect that's just because, well, they're not directly in the sun, because we were finding that they didn't like being directly in the sun in the kitchen. It made it hard to keep them comfortable and happy. So they probably weren't getting quite enough sun. So we'll see how they do now that we're moving them in here. And I have way too many. I have way too many plants for this bucket. Well, I'm gonna put one more plant in here. There we go. And then I'm just gonna water it in. I've got another bucket of water here. But when you're growing sweet potatoes, if you decide to this year, be sure not to over-fertilize them with nitrogen. Too much nitrogen will give you a big bushy plant. Now, if you're growing sweet potato plant for the leaves, that's great. But Rob said from experience, they've discovered that if you want good sweet potatoes, don't steal leaves off the plant you're going to be wanting sweet potatoes from. So kind of keep it separate as to whether you're growing a plant for potatoes, sweet potatoes, or for leaves. So there we go. That's all there is to it. And now we have to be patient. That's always the hardest part, of course. But I'm just gonna slide this back here a little bit. And later on we can decide to move this outside or whatever when we need more room in here. But right now we'll leave it in here. Sweet potatoes are frost sensitive. We are still right on that borderline of frost some nights. So we're going to keep it safe here and see what happens. And I'm actually tempted to just plant these guys in here too. And I have all this stuff out of my kitchen. And then we'll just call this, you know, sweet potato forest over here. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We'll call it a sweet potato forest. There we go. Good and soggy. They just came out of water, so I want to make sure that their roots have access to plenty of water. And because there are holes in the bottom of this, it's not going to drown them. But we want to make sure that they don't suffer too much shock from being removed from water suddenly and stuffed into dirt that's dry, because that definitely can kill things. So I hope this inspires you to try growing sweet potatoes. And I guess we'll see what happens at the end of the season when we harvest them. So until then, have a great week. Don't forget, like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so that you know when we do more stuff, because I still have another bucket to plant over here. And I can tell you it's not going to be full of sweet potatoes. So until then, bye. And get a little bit more water, Mr. Jack. Excuse me, your patooties in my way.